The South African government brought a case against Israel on December 29, accusing it of genocidal acts in assaults on Gaza. They have evidence of these crimes. In Guatemala, authorities of the 48 cantons made first call for attention to the elected governments for an exclusive cabinet with a high presence of the business sector. In Argentina, a plenary meeting of union delegations of the General Labor Confederation ratifies a strike and mobilizations against presidential decrees. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The South African government brought a case against Israel on December 29, accusing it of genocidal acts in its assaults on Gaza. They have evidence of these crimes. Let's remember that since the conflict began, more than 23,000 Palestinians have been killed. 70% of them are children and women. There is also the cruel and inhuman treatment inflicted on a large number of civilians, including minors, who were detained, blindfolded, and forced to undress and left outside in the cold before being transferred to unknown locations. Moreover, there have been a violation of security assurances with the bombing of areas that have been declared safe for residents. And there's also the deprivation of access to food and water, as well as privation of access to adequate housing, clothing, and hygiene. In addition, Palestinians' lives were destroyed, along with their homes, universities, and culture, and even with this evidence, the government of Israel is trying to defend itself from these crimes. And South African government brought a case against Israel on December 29th, accusing it of genocidal acts in its assaults on Gaza. The hearing starts today in The Hague and Netherlands. We have more information with our correspondent, Yunus on air. Good morning, Yunus. What is going on there?
Hello, good afternoon. Actually, here at the local time, we are right now in front of the International Court of Justice. You can see it behind me, the old building, where the presentation of the South African delegation has finished. The South African delegation has presented various evidences to show that the Israeli government has purportedly committed the crime of genocide. The delegation has presented evidence in detail showing, firstly, the massacres committed against the Palestinian population in Gaza and West Jordania, and it has also demonstrated the intent of genocide, for instance, by presenting Israeli government spokespersons' statements, Israeli parliamentarian statements, which clearly demonstrate the will to exterminate partly or completely the Palestinian population in Gaza. This is crucial because the crime of genocide includes the intent to eliminate a race, an ethnic group entirely or partly. So now, meanwhile, at the same time, outside of the court, there was a huge demonstration in favor of the South African delegation's presentation. Thousands of people have gathered here by -5 degrees approximately, stood there 3-4 hours in support of South Africa and in support of the Palestinian people. There were a lot of course, people of Palestinian origin, of Muslim origin, but there were also a lot of participation from the local Dutch population and even some Jews who presented themselves symbolically as Jews and who stated that these policies of Israel are not done in their names. That was their slogan that they used here in the demonstrations. Right now the hearing has stopped. Tomorrow on Friday at 10 o'clock local time, the Israeli side will present its version of the story. It will defend itself against the allegation of having committed or of committing a genocide in Palestine, and we will see what they will say. What we talked to here in front of the court to several members also of the South African delegation. And what's interestingly, they placed the case not only in the context of the Israel-Palestinian conflict, but in a broader context. For instance, Dane Zanger, who is the Director General of the South African Ministry for Foreign Affairs, said that this case is also part of a global campaign of decolonization. Zanger said that the case should demonstrate that some supportedly strong states are not above international law, they are not about humanitarian law. And so he made a case for multipolarism, actually, which is being defended here. We spoke also to Craig Murray, who is an ex-British diplomat, a career diplomat who spent a lot of time, his entire life in British diplomacy, and who is very critical of today's British policies towards Israel and Gaza. And he stated that the United States and Britain are trying currently to undermine the judges' authority, are trying to pressure the judges to rule in favor of Israel and reject South African claims. Also an interesting point. We spoke to Spanish parliamentarians who criticized the European policies towards the conflict and who said that Europe should separate itself, make itself independent from US policies towards the Middle East and towards Israel specifically, and who applauded the Spanish government's vocal position against Israel, but who demanded concrete actions reaching out to cutting off diplomatic ties entirely and also to cutting off commercial ties. The former mayor of Barcelona and the Spanish parliamentarians told us that they demanded more concrete action. So the situation here is at the core is the conflict, is the genocide committed against the Palestinians in Gaza and West Jordania, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But around it, everyone is well aware this is a broader conflict about, let's say, the old world, which was dominated by the United States and its Middle Eastern ally or West Asian ally, Israel, against the new world, which is one of multipolarism, where this is the struggle. Humanitarian and international law prevails even over the United States and, most importantly, over Israel.
Thank you, Yunus Saleh, for reporting for us from The Hague, Netherlands. We'll hope more information later on. And we continue with more news. Also on Wednesday, Palestinians gathered in Ramallah's Nelson Mandela Square to thank South Africa for her support for Palestine by filing a genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. The crowd held banners calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, as others waved Palestinian and South African flags. Ramallah Major Asa Cassie thanked South Africa for filing the case and assuring that Israel's actions are genocidal.
We say thank you. Thank you to South Africa. Thank you for filing case against occupation at the ICJ. We believe that many countries felt our pain, but South Africa decided to put it materially on paper, and file a case.
And the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, on his social network X, shared a press release from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, stating that his government welcomes the lawsuit filed by South Africa against Israel at the International Court of Justice in The Hague for violations of provisions of the 1948 Convention Against Genocide. The press release also refers that it's very clear that the actions and measures adopted by the government of Israel constitute acts of genocide. As a state, Israel is obliged to prevent these international crimes, and consequently its failure to comply with these commitments entails its responsibility before the whole world. These are obligations erga omnes that have been breached. The communique also pointed out that South Africa's demand is a courageous step in the right direction, and Colombia intends to enforce the lofty objective of the convention to which it is also a state party, and therefore intends to accompany and support this legal action through the procedural tools and remedies provided by the statute and practice of the International Court of Justice. The Israeli occupation army intensified its shelling and ground operations against Middle and Southern Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, killing at least 147 people and injuring 243 others. According to the report issued this Wednesday by the Gaza Health Ministry, the number of Palestinians killed since October 2023 rose to 23,357, while the number of wounded reached 59,410. However, health authorities warned that the number of fatalities and those affected by the bombardments could continue to rise, since several people are still under the rubble on the roads. Ambulance and civil defense teams are advancing in their efforts to find more victims and possible survivors despite the persistent bombardments. On Wednesday, the Israeli government assassinated another Palestinian journalist. In the midst of the incessant bombing against the Palestinian civilian population, Heba al-Abdallah died with her little daughter, Judy. The attack, described by Palestinian human rights organization as expressed and premeditated, occurred in Khan Yunis, south of Gaza. The magnitude, accuracy, and degree of destruction of the journalist's home confirmed the accusations. The Palestinian Information Center, after regretting the killing of the reporter and her daughter, ratified that the new crime is part of the Zionist attempt to silence the truth about war crimes in the Gaza Strip. With Heba's death, the number of journalists killed in 97 days of the genocidal operation rises to 111. Yemen's unmanned aerial missile and Navy forces attacked a U.S. ship transporting supplies to Israel. Following the joint operation, it was reported that the action responded to the malicious attack by the U.S. enemy forces against Yemen's naval corps. This in reference to the destruction of the 3 small vessels that were attempting to attack the commercial vessel of the Danish shipping company Maersk. In a document, the Yemeni army also assured that it will not hesitate to respond appropriately to all hostile threats within the framework of the right self-defense of its country. It also reiterated that it continues to prevent Israeli and other ships from sailing to ports of occupied Palestine and sailing the Red Sea until the end of the Israeli aggressions against the Gaza Strip. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met on Wednesday with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. This is the 4th tour of the Middle East since Israeli-Palestinian conflict broke out again. The chief U.S. diplomat is trying to rally the region around post-war plans for Gaza, which must include concrete steps toward a Palestinian state. The approach faces serious obstacles, and Blinken is aware of that. On Tuesday, Blinken declared that Israel must stop taking steps that undermine the Palestinians' ability to govern themselves effectively and emphasize the importance of moving toward a two-state solution. The government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is adamantly opposed to the creation of a Palestinian state neighboring Israel. The Israeli post-war Gaza plan presented on January 4th did not include a political solution for all of Palestine. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, new days, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. And in Guatemala, the indigenous people grouped in the 48 cantons and the exiled people who have led the struggles in defense of democracy for more than 100 days have made a strong appeal to the president-elect, Bernardo Arevalo. Ratifying their commitment to democracy and respect for the will of the people, they rejected the expulsionary character of the cabinet of the elected government. They regretted that they will not take advantage of the historic opportunity to form a more inclusive team. They also questioned the majority presence of people linked to business groups. In an interview to a national media, the president-elect acknowledged the relevance of the observations. In Argentina, the Confederal Committee met on Wednesday and agreed to reinforce the call for the strike and mobilization on January 24th. More than 250 leaders of 70 regional organizations also agreed to support all the actions that may be carried out in the interior of the country on the 24th, but especially in the days before. From now on, they will promote actions and regional meetings. Among the resolutions approved, the resounding and unanimous support to the strategy of action of the Board of Directors of the Confederation is highlighted. Also, the surrounding rejection to the emergency decree issued by the executive power. The president of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, assured that the country is in a state of war after the violent actions of organized crime gangs. The head of state insisted that they will not give in to the pressure of terrorist groups made up of some 20,000 people in the national territory. The president also warned that judges, police and military that if they collaborate with the criminals, they will be judged for the same crime. Noboa also announced that this week will begin the extradition of the foreign prison population. The country was declared by the national executive in a state of war after multiple escapes of leaders of criminal groups from different penitentiaries. In Ecuador, authorities reported that at least 139 people have been held for 72 hours in several prisons in the country. Prison authorities confirmed that 125 penitentiary guards and 14 members of the administrative staff are currently being held in the prison of the provinces of Suica, Napo, Tungurahua, and Cotopaxi. Meanwhile, in Esmeraldas, there are currently 10 prison guards and 3 people being held, including the prison director. The kidnapped have been used by the captors to record videos with demands to government on the threat of death. It is reported that this is the 5th time in 2 years that prisoners have held prison officials in jail to demand the prohibition of entry to security forces or to prevent the transfer of prison leaders to other facilities. This Tuesday, the government of Peru decided to declare a state of emergency in the border with Ecuador in the midst of the wave of violence that is shaking the neighboring country. The information was released by the Peruvian Prime Minister Alberto Otarola. This is a consequence of the violence registered in the Ecuadorian city of Guayaquil during the last hours. The Prime Minister assured that a contingent of police officers have been deployed to support the security forces currently stationed at the border with Ecuador to carry out a more intense control of the transit of people.
When a state of emergency is declared, the armed forces are ordered to come to support the national police, and of course, they will be in transit. We have a series of military establishments that are coordinating. The Minister of the Ground are going to coordinate the operational part, but we want to assure you that the decision taken by President Boluarte to give tranquility and calm, especially to the population of Tumbes and Piura, there has been a little alarm by this event.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code and screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Zimbabwe, the number of deaths from cholera has risen to 300, while health authorities report at least 5,000 suspected cases. According to the Ministry of Health, the increase in number of cases registered since September 2023 is due to the consumption of unsafe water, public gatherings, and the poor state of the sewers, a situation that led to the government to declare the capital Harare in state of emergency. In view of the critical situation, the authorities called on the population to comply with the hygiene standards and protocols in order to prevent further spread, while launching a cleanup campaign to remove some 200 metric tons of waste, which is seriously disrupting essential services in the midst of a complex sanitary situation. The government of Uganda will destroy more than 5.6 million doses of anti-COVID-19 vaccines that have expired due to the slower uptake and decline in demand in the country. According to an audit report, these vaccines, valued at 28 billion 100 million Uganda shillings or $7.3 million US, they were effectively distributed in the country, but in the end they were never applied. In view of this, they will withdraw from the health centers by the health authorities and subsequently destroyed. The audit report revealed that total losses from expired COVID-19 vaccines will exceed $78 million US by the end of the year. In Germany, a strike of train drivers who are demanding a wage increase and labor improvement took place on Wednesday. The German railroad company Deutsche Bahn informed that due to the strike, road traffic will be restricted to the public. It is since the operator advised the public to refrain from traveling by train until the strike is over. For his part, the union demanded an increase of €555 per month, as well as a transition from a 38 to a 35-hour working week. Meanwhile, the company indicated that it is ready to agree only on a one-time reward and a wage increase of 11% for 32 months. At the same time, more than 70 highways were blocked by German farmers who reject the measures implemented by the government in December 2023. Protesters announced budget-saving measures which involved eliminating subsidy for diesel fuel and tax exception foreseen for means of transport used in the first sector, economy and agriculture. Demonstrators assured that protests will spread the other states until the government listens to their demands. The United Nations General Assembly approved on Wednesday the resolution presented by the G77 and China to establish the International Day of Science, Technology and Innovation for the South every September 16. The proposal, introduced by Cuba as chair of the bloc, was agreed earlier by the head of states and government participating in the group summit held in Havana in September 2023. The text recognizes the key role of scientific technical advances in economic growth and sustainable development, the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the Political Declaration, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the importance of collaboration between countries for scientific development. Indonesia's Mount Lewottobi Laki-Laki erupted again on Wednesday, spreading clouds of ash 2 kilometers above its summit. Meanwhile, authorities raised the volcano's alert status to the highest level. The eruption follows weeks of intense volcanic activity on the mountain located on the eastern Indonesian island of Flores and prompted the local government to issue an evacuation order by nearby residents. Local authorities set up 2 temporary shelters currently housing some 5,000 people. The Southeast Asian archipelago lies in the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of intense volcanic and seismic activity which has about 130 volcanoes. We have come to the end of this brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.